Om Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagatgurum Padapadme Tvayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharma surupine avatara varisthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. Welcome everybody, and everybody also online. Okay, namaste everybody. So it's good, thank you. Welcome everybody. So as we normally do, this week we have an interesting topic. I don't think Chapter 2 of Swami Vivekananda's Karma Yoga has ever been explained in this way. Science of Action, the Spiritual Impostor Syndrome. I think it's something quite relevant, and it's something that affects all spiritual aspirants, monastic or non-monastic, especially when we first join. The problem of having a high ideal. Just right before that, I just want to real quickly review what we did last time. So last week we introduced a new theory by Edward Desai, the self-determination theory, which talks about 3 factors that align themselves with Swami Vivekananda's Karma Yoga. Does anyone, the first factor is, for work to be meaningful and elevating, it should be autonomous. That when we do it, we should not feel compulsion from others to do. It's bubbling up from within. That's the first aspect. Second aspect, skillfulness. As in the Gita, they say karma sukaushalam. So that idea of skill, of competence in our work. This is the second aspect to Sheva Yoga. Third aspect is what? Relation. In a worldly sense, this means connection. We're doing some, say, Ashokta is doing some volunteer service. He's feeling some connection with the devotee or who he's serving. But as we quite often know, lots of times that doesn't happen. In fact, if you usually expect anything from the world, if you're a real spiritual aspirant, the world doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you need. So these are the 3 aspects. One insight just came to me right now, and that is that this idea of relation, it's not connection with another human being. It's connection with whom? With Thakur, with this Atman. That's the goal of connection in this self-determination theory. Okay? So now we're going to start a new chapter for those of you who have, Chapter 2, Swami Vivekananda's Karma Yoga. And I'm going to give a quick introduction. The challenge of impostor syndrome in spiritual life. What is this impostor syndrome? It comes to all of us, either when we first joined the order or even as a devotee. What is it? I was first introduced to this concept when I was at Harvard Divinity School. It's an elite university, so during the orientation, they talked about this idea of impostor syndrome. What is impostor syndrome? It's a psychological experience in which a person suffers from feelings of intellectual, professional fraudulence. In other words, those students there, even though they're very smart and intelligent, they somehow feel that they did not belong, that they were not good enough. What happens when you feel like that? You start to act, it's called impostor syndrome. You start to act differently. Swami Vivekananda talked about this impostor syndrome in spiritual life. He says this, that, 9/10 of man's energy goes in trying to for me to convince you of what I am. and less than 1/10 in trying to actually become that. So he recognized that this concept is also there in spiritual life, not just in intellectual life. How does it manifest itself in spiritual life? So one way it manifests itself is that lots of people do this. When we first join, okay, whatever I am, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe if I'm a monk, I just joined as a monk, or I'm a devotee, because the ideal is so high. Sort of this seeing God in everyone is so high an ideal. Maybe I'm not up to it. So we also take on new habits. Maybe lots of us become vegetarians when we first join. Maybe we've been eating fish, meat our whole life, but when we join, what do? We become vegetarians. That's a common factor I see in many spiritual aspirants. Another thing, the behavior might change. That same person, I sometimes hear that same person who was kind of joyful and cheerful and manifesting that aspect of ananda, suddenly he shrinks up, he or she shrinks up, becomes very serious. Now, this is an important thing, and we sometimes overlook it. In talking about a spiritual ideal, the ideal that Swami Vivekananda gave to us, Atmano mokshartam jagadhitayacha, for one's own liberation and for the welfare of the world. The other aspect, Shiva Gyane Jiva Sheva, seeing this Shiva in everybody, serving that living God in everybody. Okay, you're taking this Vedanta, Aham Brahmasmi, I am that Brahman, Tattvamasi. So what's a higher ideal than that? So such a high ideal, so naturally all of us when we first join, people start giving us more respect or whatever. As a devotee, oh, you're apne mane Thakurer bhakta. So we then feel somehow that we have to hide something sometimes. Swami Yatishwarananda, in reply to that, you can argue that Swami Yatishwarananda says that whether you're a householder or a monk, when you first join, get initiation from a spiritual organization, it's important for all of us to cultivate a new spiritual identity. Okay? That spiritual identity for a monk might be dressing or living a routine life, replacing with new habits. That's important. Now, but the problem that we have, just in general, I don't want to say just focus just on monks or devotees, just spiritual life in general, we might, in cultivating these habits, Swamiji talked about the 3 H's. What are the 3 H's again? Head, hand, or hriday in Bangla, heart. So what happens sometimes is that, see, if you look at the lives of Thakurman Swamiji, they were the perfect synthesis of all 3 of these factors. But what happens with us sometimes, and the difficulty comes, and Swamiji is going to talk about that today, is that we don't cultivate that 3rd factor, the heart. Is that clear? So we cultivate the first 2, the intellect, the knowledge we get, all these other nice factors, the projection we get, and doing so much karma yoga we get. But this 3rd aspect has to be given more attention by all of us. That's important. Okay. So now with that, let's go to if any of those who have Swami Vivekananda's book, Karma Yoga, the 1st chapter, you can open that up. This is chapter 2. Each is great in his own place. I'm not going to go through all the text, but I do want, for those of you who can see, to recognize how much of an overlap there is between Karma Yoga and Raja Yoga. For those of you who attended Raja Yoga, Swamiji talked about man as being a manifestation of these 3 different gunas. I'll just really quickly say it. Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. Tamas is, Swamiji says, Tamas is typified as darkness or inactivity. Rajas is activity expressed as attraction or repulsion. And Sattva is the equilibrium of the two. In every man or human being, there are these three forces. Sometimes Tamas prevails. We become lazy, we cannot move, we are inactive, bound by certain ideas or by mere dullness. You know, this tamas can also come when sometimes we might have they call a perfectionism. Oh, I didn't do this right. So the person feels bad about themselves. So then rather than facing those feelings, they might just start to go to the internet, doing something passive. It's really interesting. Swamiji is talking about these three different gunas, but Swamiji did not live in the age of the internet. So what internet is showing nowadays, this mobile phone, even if we're in a sattvika state or a rajasika state, meaning a state of calmness or activity, by getting a notification on the phone, our mind can drop. Is that clear? How many have experienced that here or online? You look at the internet, you're feeling pretty good, you're in a calm state. Suddenly something comes, some news that triggers you. It might be some religious violence, it might be current affairs going around the world, anything it might be. So that's why it's just interesting to note that. More than ever, it's important for us to practice this awareness of this tamas, rajas and sattva. We all know what this is, but how many of us can practice awareness when, say, we are in a particular state, say of tamas, laziness or dullness? So these three factors he's talking about. He continues in the next paragraph. Karma Yoga has specially to deal with these three factors. By teaching what they are and how to employ them, it helps us to do our work better. That's interesting. It helps us to do our work better. Something subtle in that. To deal with these three factors. What do you think he means by to deal with these three factors? That awareness. Okay, I'm tamasic right now. Let me go and do let me not just jump into meditation right now. Let me jump into sheva, physical activity. Or sometimes the mind is very rajasic, too restless. At that time, sometimes reading books, doing some deep breathing, catching our breath. Okay. Okay, now Swamiji continues. Human society is a graded organization. We all know about morality and we all know about duty. But at the same time, we find that in different countries, the significance of morality varies greatly. And Swamiji mentioned this in Raja Yoga. What is regarded as moral in one country may in another be considered perfectly immoral. For example, the idea of marriage. In some ideas, it might be said that to marry, to have multiple wives is okay in some religions. And in other religions, you might say that no, just one wife you should have. And in other places now it's coming that not to marry at all, just having a partner. So we have to adjust with that. The problem as we get older is we know these things Swamiji is saying, but we waste a lot of energy. We start judging, say, the older generation. Oh, they're not doing as we did. Does that make sense? It's not just religion versus religion. It's more about how we see like the younger generation now. It's more about, say, parents with their younger children. As I did, they're not doing like that. Then what we start to do, amra ninda kori. We start to criticize others. We start to criticize the older generation. That affects our relationships with them. We become judgmental. And then what happens? What happens at that time? We then become the relationship breaks down. In fact, if you look at most of the relationships between the young people, the children and their parents, it's probably because the parents were not taught how this idea, each generation has its own ideal too. What are some permanent ideals we can impart, but other things we have to let go? Okay. So Swamiji says, just as with morality, it is also with duty. The idea of duty varies among different nations. In one country, if a man does not do certain things, people will say he has acted wrongly. While if he does those very things in another country, people will say that he did not act rightly. Okay, let's just go to the bottom. The important, so there are two ways left open to us. The way of the ignorant, who think that there is only one way to truth and that all the rest are wrong, and the way of the wise, who admit that according to our mental constitution or the different planes of existence in which we are, duty and morality may vary. The important thing to know is that there are gradations of duty and of morality, that the duty of one state of life in one set of circumstances will not and cannot be that of another. So that's something that we really have to think about and digest. Okay, now, so Swamiji talks about first duty and morality. Now we're going to get into the unique stuff. The problem, the challenges of having a high ideal. So he says, Swamiji says, to illustrate, all great teachers have taught, resist not evil, that non-resistance is the highest moral ideal. And actually, this actually comes from the Bible. This comes from Matthew, Gospel of Matthew 5.39, Sermon on the Mount. The exact passage is, but I say unto you, that ye resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also. That's Old English, but what it means is if someone slaps you on the right cheek, then you turn the other cheek. So what does Swamiji say about this? Resist not evil is the highest moral ideal. We all know, however, that if a certain number of us attempted to put that maxim fully into practice, the whole social fabric would fall to pieces. The wicked would take possession of our properties and our lives and would do whatever they like with us. You might have lived through this. Some of you who are old enough may have lived through this type of thing, that if you don't act, then you'll get destroyed. In the Gita, it's there. Klaibhyam mas magama partha na etatvayi upapadyate. Shuddham hridayo dorbalyam takto tushta padantapa. So Krishna told Arjuna, give up this faint-heartedness, give up this cowardness. When Arjuna, seeing the array of army in front of him, did not wish to fight. So, Swamiji continues, yet intuitively, in our heart of hearts, we feel the truth of the teaching, resist not evil. I would say that resist not evil, I would say in today's language, rather than resist not evil, in Thakur said sha, practice tolerance. In Sanskrit, didiksham, forbearance. I would say that that's a better word. That when we try to practice that, if somebody says something to me, rather than reacting, we wait and we can either keep silent or we respond. That's the better way. So Swamiji continues, not only so it would make certain men feel, so if we are not, the problem, this is the problem with a high ideal. If we're sincere about it and we don't live up to it, what happens then? we start to feel guilty. And that brings about what? Weakness. Constant guilt, constant weakness. Oh, ami pachina. I'm not able to wake up at 3:30 in the morning. Whatever it may be. So a guilt, that feeling of, Thakur ki in Bengali, he said, Jar bolbe, ami papi, papi hoye jabe. In English, that's whoever says, I'm a sinner, they become what? A sinner. And who says, Ami Atman, I'm that Atman. If we say that again and again, this Tattvamasi, that comes. So going back to this, Swamiji explains, making men feel that they were always doing wrong and causing them scruples of conscience in all their actions. It would weaken them, and that constant self-disapproval would breed more vice than any other weakness would. Just think about that. That's really powerful, Swami. That constant self-disapproval. How many listening today at this talk, how many of us feel like that sometimes? We internally begin to criticize ourselves, not knowing that that has its effect. Swamiji continues, to the man who has begun to hate himself, the gate to degeneration has already opened. And the same is true of a nation. You know, when you look at any of these horrific actions, any kind of actions, someone acting, abusing another, you know where the studies show it usually comes from? Self-hatred. So, what Gita sloka is this in line with? Swamiji, remember, he's speaking, whatever he's quoting from Karma Yoga, he's always aligning himself with the Gita. So you have in the Gita, Udurayat Atman Atmanam, Natmanam avasadayet. So the Atman should be, we should lift ourselves through our mind and never weaken ourselves, make ourselves depressed through our mind. Another concept of is, but in addition to that, Swamiji says this, he's talking about the idea of duty, and he is talking about that here too, that it's actually 17.3 of the Gita. Shraddha mayo yam purusho yo yav shraddha sa eva saha. And what that means is a person is made of faith. Whatever his faith, that he becomes. So a person is made of faith of what? In himself. This is what Sri Krishna is saying. Whatever that faith is, that's what he becomes. Thakur in the Katamrita barbar bolechilen, Vishwas, Vishwas, Vishwas. Faith, faith, faith. But it's not, what Swamiji is talking about here, it's not this faith in another. It's faith in who? First faith in whom? What? Ourselves, yes. The Atman, you can say. So Swamiji continues, therefore the only alternative remaining to us is to recognize that duty and morality vary under different circumstances. Not that the man who resists evil is doing what is always and in itself wrong, but that in the different circumstances in which he is placed, it may become even his duty to resist evil. So this is one point I wanted to first stress. The idea of not that if the ideal is too high, it can lead to self-hatred, self-degeneration. Why? Because we constantly criticize ourselves. Now, this was the problem of Arjuna. There's another type that also suffers from this problem. Swamiji does not mention, but he's a character in the Mahabharata. Shakuni, you know, the treacherous person, the uncle of Duryodhana. What did he do? So he won't, he won't, for him, if somebody insulted him, what he's saying, Arjuna won't fight because he's afraid. So Shakuni won't fight, but it'll be from what's called from a level of tamas. It'll be scheming afterwards. And we find that sometimes, that we take this high ideal, and then rather than trying to put it into practice, we keep quiet on the outside. So it looks like we're practicing calmness, forbearance. But no, that's only the objective manifestation. What we're really doing inside, this is what politicians do. We're scheming. Acha, shala, deki, you rascal, I'll see afterwards what I'll do to you. So that idea of planning afterwards. Does that make sense to everybody? No, Thakur and Swamiji did not even address this because he did not consider such people to be spiritual aspirants. At least Arjuna, okay, he's feeling cowardice. We can raise from there. But Thakur and Swamiji and Mother were never that who did not have that shorala na hoy, that guilelessness in that Bengali, that word is there, shorala. In the Bangladesh, Thakur said in Bengali, shorala na hoy, Bhagavan ke pawa jai na. Unless one is simple and guileless, one cannot realize God. And he said in another place, this quality of guilelessness, shorla, is the most difficult thing to attain. Now, in the next passage, Swamiji agrees with what we just said. This is a great lesson for us all to learn, that in all matters, the two extremes are alike. So if somebody insults me, ami kichu bolbo na. I want to make a show of sattva, but inside it might be, I'm afraid. Swamiji continues, the extreme positive and the extreme negative are always similar. When the vibrations of light are too slow, we do not see them, nor do we see them when they are too rapid. So with sound. When very low in pitch, we do not hear it. When very high, we do not hear it either. Anyone who's interested, I gave lots of talks on this. This is Swamiji's addressing the different physicists and scientists in the crowd. You can see the earlier talks in Raja Yoga about it. Now this next passage is important. So Swamiji continues, of like nature is the difference between resistance and non-resistance. One man does not resist because he is weak, lazy, and cannot, not because he will not. The other man knows that he can strike an irresistible blow if he likes, yet he only does not strike, but blesses his enemies. So this is the thing, whether it's non-resistance, whether it's truthfulness. When I first joined, I saw one monk. He used to be a lawyer before he joined. So any brahmachari would say anything to him, he would immediately give back. Give back in such a way that he won that battle. But inside he felt like he was losing the war. And he one day asked Swami Vivekananda, who was, I think, the guide, the mentor of the PPTC brahmacharis, Maharaj, I'm doing this. I'm saying that Ami sab samay reaction korchi. I'm always reacting. But everybody else, they're not reacting. Then Swami Vivekananda ji, he's very practical. He was trained by Premesh Maharaj. He's now one of the vice presidents of our order. He said, they're reacting not because they choose not to, but because they don't know how. They don't know how to react. So what Swamiji is saying here, this is the problem of a high ideal. Any ideal we choose, a spiritual ideal, we sometimes try to show on the outside, oh, I'm calm, I'm non-violent, I don't react, I have a cool mind. That's the objective manifestation. But what subjectively is going on? Is that clear? That needs to, Swamiji is warning us against this hypocrisy. Okay. Swamiji continues, the one who from weakness resists not commits a sin. I'll give you two examples of this. The one who from weakness resists not commits a sin. Holy Mother, When Holy Mother was in Jairambati, one time there was an incident where the British police officers took some village women from Jairambati and they made them walk all the way from Jairambati to Kolkata, a far long distance. When Holy Mother heard that, did she say, oh good, no one did anything? That's very good. Tini ki bollen? What did she say? Were there not any men around who could give a slap to the people, to those British officers? So Holy Mother is saying this. Another time, Sister Nivedita, she was in Kolkata, someplace, I think it was Kolkata, and a bull came, an angry bull came in front of her. There was another young man with her. The young man saw the bull and ran off. Sister Nivedita looked at the bull, faced it off. And then she ran after that young man. She caught him by the collar and said, what were you thinking? Leaving a woman out there like that to face this angry bull by itself? What kind of a man are you? So, this idea of non-resistance, this again, we have to think about this. This is just one example of the idea of non-resistance. That's a very high ideal. But most of us, we have to first go from the level of tamas, we have to first cultivate our strength, cultivate our self, this atma vishwash, that confidence in our own self, cultivate our muscles, cultivate all these things. At the later levels, these things come. I wrote in this light, I'm going to take it even one step further. In the Prabhupada Bharata 2023 issue, I wrote an article, The Challenges for the Ramakrishna Mission, Challenges in Harmonizing the Ideal with the Real. So I'll attach this in the next YouTube, when we post this talk. If you're interested, you can read the article. But in it, we discussed that even our direct disciples of Ramakrishna, they struggled with this idea, these high ideals. In this article, I wrote about 3 different types of ideals that we struggle with in our order. The first one, the idea of love for one's own nation versus a general love for humanity, this divinity and all. Swamiji had 2 things bollen. One is this love for one's own nation. Let me give you an example. Sannyasis take the idea of non-retaliation. So once on the ship, I believe it was coming back from England back to Chennai, one Christian priest began to denigrate Hinduism to Swamiji. And then what did Swamiji do? Did he say, oh, I'm just a monk? No, he grabbed the Christian priest by the collar and said, be careful how you talk about my religion. I can throw you overboard. So Swamiji was quite strong and this Christian priest was much more skinny. So Sharat Chandra Chakraborty, his disciple, afterwards he asked him the question, Swamiji, you as a sannyasi have taken this vow of non-resistance, non-violence. Was it right for you to utter such words to that Christian priest? And what did Swamiji say? He said, if somebody criticizes your mother, what will you do? Sharat Chandra Chakraborty uttar diyechen, I shall let them have it. So Swamiji said, similarly, if somebody criticizes your dharma, your religion, you must have this equal nishtha. So this idea of love for one's own country, love for one's own religion, that's one aspect, this nishtha. But let me challenge everyone here. What makes the Ramakrishna mission unique? What did Swamiji say about that? The uniqueness of the Ramakrishna mission is not just a high ideal. Philosophy is everyone preaches a high ideal. Swamiji said, it was the uniqueness of Thakur's life, Ramakrishna's life. What did he say about that life? It was the rare synthesis, and I'll first say in English then Bangla, of this depth. In Bengali you could say gobhir, along with breadth, udarata. So this depth with breadth. Swamiji continues, normal people, when they choose an ideal, either they'll be, say regarding religion, they'll be too fanatical. My religion, my way, is the only way. As Ramakrishna would say in Bangla, aghe, one-sided. So that type of attitude we've seen again and again, it leads to fanaticism, right? What's the flip side of that? This udarata. That's like, I love all religions. Now that's good, that's the idea what Thakur said. But at the same time, if that's not accompanied with a deep nishtha and a deep knowledge of one's own dharma, what happens then? It leads to superficiality. There was one young student in Harvard, and she was very much talking about the Hindu caste system, criticizing the Hindu caste system, and criticizing Hinduism. But she's a Hindu, so she was asking me my opinion. So I was saying, she was trying to like align herself with all the different religions. General love for all the religions. But then I asked her, but how much do you know about your own religion? So this balance between this nishtha as well as this udarata, gobhir but udarata, this is in the light of Sri Ramakrishna. We see that in Swamiji. Swamiji, on the one side, he was going to take that Christian priest and throw him off. Yet in the other side, when they asked him about Jesus, he says, if Christ were alive today, I would worship him with my heart's blood. Combination of these two factors. Same thing with Holy Mother. I gave you the example of this idea of a general love for all nations, because this Sarva Bhuta Atmanam, this Atman exists everywhere. So this consciousness is everywhere. We say that, but sometimes we can lose that. We can sometimes start to have hatred, this grina towards others. Am I correct? That's a challenge of us. Even in our order, that's a challenge for us. But that's necessary. But at the same time, so how do you balance these two things? Holy Mother balanced these two things. What did she do? Yes, on the one side, she, the British officers, when they made those two ladies from Jairambati walk all the way to, all the way to Kolkata, she was very angry. She not only said, by whose command did they do this? If this is just was it just a few rogue officers? Or was it the official command of the British government? And then she uttered, if this was now the official policy of the British government, it will not last much longer. So you see, she said that on the one side. So she supports Indian nationalism. Yet on the other side, all of you know that example where one of her disciples was a freedom fighter. He had that tendency. So I think Radhu or Maku, she wanted some expensive foreign silk sari. And then the person did not want to buy it. I think he wanted to buy one tatir sari. Tatir, right? The cotton sari made in India. I wonder why he didn't say, why not buy a Varanasi silk sari instead? But he wanted to give that because that's made in India, the simple cotton sari, rather than the expensive shawl from England. So when he brought that instead, Mother asked, why did you do that? I asked you to bring this foreign sari. Then the brahmachari started to critique the different British people. What? Ma ki bollen? What did she say about those British people? Or amar chele. After all, they're my children too. So you see this beautiful, this is how we actually have to act. How do we balance both these things together? One must feel this great love for one's own country, this nishtha, but at the same time, sarvabhuta atmanam, so with that idea that consciousness is everywhere, so that love, Swami Ranganathanji used to say that. And Swamiji too, Swamiji would say that, I'm not just a citizen of, I'm a citizen of the entire world. Who has greater love for India than Swamiji? But these were his utterances. I'm a citizen of the whole world belongs to me. That was so manifest in Swami Vivekananda's character. So this is what you talk about. What is this lakshana of a sthita pragya? You know, in the Gita 2.52, sthita pragya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava. So how does a man of realization, how does he move? How does he walk? How does he talk? So this is that sthita pragya lakshana. This is that characteristic. Whoever they come into contact with, those people will feel that Swamiji, they would feel that Swamiji belongs to them. Swamiji loved India, but when he would come to these American families, you look at the Hale family, the Bulls family, all these different families in the West. You can read these books, The Western Admirers of Swami Vivekananda. And they would feel from their inside, Swamiji belongs to us. Let's continue now. So Swamiji continues, Buddha gave up his throne and renounced his position. That was true renunciation. But there cannot be any question of renunciation in the case of a beggar who has nothing to renounce. So these are the two extremes. Sometimes we even see that in sadhus. Someone might not have anything, but they might have renounced everything in past lives. So these things are all, there's a subjective and an objective side to these high ideals. So Swamiji continues, so we must always be careful about what we really mean when we speak of this non-resistance and ideal love. We must first take care to understand whether we have the power of resistance or not. This is the problem actually, you know, if you ask me. That's why we have to be careful. We use these Shiva Gyani Jiva Sheva. We use it so glibly. But that's an end state. Yes, that's our practice. But like I spoke about last time, it's not so easy to practice that. In fact, we can be the biggest, so we have to constantly analyze our intentionality when we're engaged in karma yoga. And afterwards, look at it again. This is what Swamiji says. When engaged in karma yoga, afterwards, how close did I come to that ideal? It's very, very important. That post-reflection afterwards. If we cannot resist and yet at the same time try to deceive ourselves into the belief that we are actuated by motives of the highest love, we are doing the exact opposite. Arjuna became a coward at the sight of the mighty array against him. His love make him forget his duty towards his country and king. That is why Sri Krishna told him that he was a hypocrite. Thou talkest like a wise man, but thy actions betray thee to be a coward. Therefore stand up and fight. So this is a challenge for all of us. When we proclaim these high ideals, how do we balance that? Where am I with respect to that ideal? When I see another human being, how much of this Shiva Gyana Jiva Sheva, how much of that Shiva am I actually really seeing in him? Such is the central idea of karma yoga. The karma yogi is the man who understands that the highest ideal is non-resistance, and who also knows that this non-resistance is the highest manifestation of power in actual possession. So we talked about that the last two classes, the first two classes. Why is that? Swamiji says that karma yoga does what? It brings out two things: knowledge and power, this manifestation of power. What are the two aspects that block, what is it that blocks this manifestation? This ahankara, this ego. And that's what blocks this. Whether it's this Advaita Vedanta or karma yoga, bhakti yoga, these are all the same things. This aham is the main enemy. Now, as we talked about before, don't go, aham is the main enemy, so don't, again, one thing I want everyone to take from this class, never again say egoism is bad. No, there are stages to this. This is what Swamiji is saying. Thakur said this in the Kautamrita. There are stages to this in any ideal. We just don't jump to the highest ideal. So, for example, regarding the idea of egoism, you won't see Swamiji talk too much in his complete works, or even Thakur would talk about saying, emphasizing the idea of ego, of being a sinner, of being an egoist too much. He talked about this idea of taking that ego and raising it from this kacha ami to this pakka ami, from the unripe ego to the ripe ego. And like I mentioned last time, Swami Ranganathananji, so he had a very healthy ego. When he would give his talks, he would always mention, I went here, I went there, I traveled all around the country, all around the world. I gave this talk, I gave that talk. Then on one occasion, somebody asked him, Maharaj, apni sadhu hoyeche, keno eraham keno bolche ache? You've become a sadhu, why are you having this egoism? So what did Ranganathanji reply? Did he say, you're right, I should not say? No. He said, yes, I shall keep building up this ego and offer it at the feet of Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna dasoham. Swamiji wrote a beautiful poem on Ramakrishna. We are the servants of Ramakrishna. We can do anything and everything. That idea of Atma Vishwash, this Thakur Vishwash. It's same energy, same Shakti comes from that. So that's the idea of any ideal. From henceforth, anytime we hear any ideal, these are good things to say, but I ask everyone watching online or here, take a step back. What is the ideal? What are the nuances of the ideal? As I mentioned, you can all read the article I wrote. There are nuances to every ideal, right? It has to be balanced by two factors. Gobhir, depth, as well as this udarata, breadth. In fact, Swami Vivekananda used to say again and again, all of these ideals should be understood in the light of Ramakrishna's life and teachings. This is very clear. Okay, then Swamiji continues, I once met a man in my country whom I had known before as a very stupid, dull person who knew nothing and had not the desire to know anything and was living the life of a brute. He asked me what he should do to know God, how he was to get free. Swamiji replied, can you tell a lie? The man replied, no. Swamiji then replied, then you must learn to do so. It is better to tell a lie than to be a brute or a log of wood. So what is he saying? You're trying to, how can you realize God from this tamasic perspective, from the state of inactivity? You know, we sometimes face this ourselves, especially when somebody's like they lost their job and they're looking for a new job. At that time, people suddenly become very interested in God. They want to join the monastery, they want to join the ashram, or they retire. Maybe they're having family difficulties at home, so they want to now come to join the monastery. So Swamiji says these two extreme cases look alike. But when we're trying to understand this ideal, where am I at that time? So when you're looking for a job, very hard. It's tough to realize God at that time. Not that you don't continue your spiritual practice, but first that's called escapism. So Swamiji is saying, whatever it may be, this is the purpose of karma yoga. This is what Shankaracharya calls chitta shuddhi. We have to go through activity. Just lying in our bed won't do anything. We have to go through it. We have to go through the activity and face ourselves. It's not about others. This world, what did Swami Vivekananda say about this world? It's nothing but a moral gymnasium. It's there to teach us. I think most of you, as you get older, don't you realize the truth of that statement? What do you think? when we look back in our lives, people who may have insulted us, who may have acted bad towards us, ultimately we see that after some time, this is just jagat, this is just the world acting. It's not anybody in particular. Swamiji said this world is a moral gymnasium. So our idea as we go through this karma yoga is what? The ego gets agitated. Through that agitation, we do discrimination, and another piece of that gets removed. When that gets removed, the inherent knowledge, the inherent power, and the inherent bliss, this anandam, that satchidanandam, that all manifest more and more. Swamiji's lightest final thing here. So activity always means resistance. Resist all evils, mental and physical. And when you have succeeded in resisting, then will calmness come. So calmness can only come through what? Not through inactivity, but through activity. And through strength and maturity. It is very easy, Swamiji continues, it is very easy to say, hate nobody, resist not evil. But we know what that kind of generally means in practice. When the eyes of society are turned towards us, we make a show of non-resistance. But in our hearts of hearts, it is canker all the time. Especially now with social media, anything you do, everyone wants to project. This idea, in Advaita, they talk about this vikshepa shakti, always trying to project. So Swamiji says, this is what we're always doing if we're honest with ourselves. 9/10 of our energy goes towards projection, and less than 1/10 in trying to become that. So Swamiji's final idea here, plunge into the world, and then after a time, when you have suffered and enjoy all that is in it, will renunciation come. Then will calmness come. So fulfill your desire for power and everything else. And after you have fulfilled the desire, will come the time when you will know that they are all very little things. I see that. My father, my pre-monastic father, he's retired now. He was a great scientist, microbiologist. So he's had that success in the world. And now when he looks back on that, he starts to see that all his mental faculties, physical faculties, they're all now starting to weaken, diminish. So for a spiritual aspirant, what I see even with him, now he just wants to go to Ramakrishna Loka. He said he would love nothing more than to go to sleep and wake up in Ramakrishna Loka. So that comes if we live this life through activity, through this strength. There's so many wonderful examples of householders I've met who have had that experience. So we're coming towards the end now. So for those of you who have watched the entire time, I'm going to end with a very special anecdote that I don't know, I think most of you may not have heard of before. Let me open this up. Okay. Let me share. Entire screen. Okay. Can everyone see this Swami here? This is Swami Atma Tattvanandaji. His other name was Shiva Maharaj. He used to stay in the Hollywood Vedanta Society. He's a disciple of Swami Prabhavanandaji. Now, he passed away. So, from the outside, you could not really understand him, who he was, what he was. Our idea of what a sadhu is, all these things. He might be out in the streets of America wearing like a pant and shirt. Many people felt he looked like Abraham Lincoln, one of the past presidents of the United States. In fact, he was a relative of his. Anyways, what happened one day, at nighttime he walked down. He used to serve the poor people of Los Angeles even at midnight. He would go into the toughest neighborhoods, trying to do service to God within them. So one day on one of his trips, he left the Hollywood Vedanta Society. He went down below. Midnight in Hollywood, it's very dangerous. Lots of drug addicts. So as he was coming back from doing some sheva, it was past midnight. Some addict approached him. He said, "Give me your money." Now, Shiva Maharaj, Swami Tattvananda, he started talking. You see, I'm a monk, I don't have any money. He went to his pockets and he was talking. And then suddenly that person, this drug addict, took a bottle. He had a bottle of alcohol. He took it and hit him on top of the head, struck him on top of the head. Shiva Maharaj fell down. His head hit the ground. Thump. He lost 2 teeth. He suffered what you call a subdermal hematoma. That means blood went into the cranium. But you know what he did? What would all of us do in that state? Past midnight, some big guy comes, hits us with a bottle, you fall down. At that time, most of us would feel what? Fear. Is it not? Fear, anxiety. Oh no, what's going to happen? But what did Shiva Maharaj do? In the next instance, even before he had time to, he stood up and said, "Brother, I love you." So Swami Swahananji, my guru, he was the head of the Hollywood Vedanta Society at that time. He used to say that this is something, there's no time to think at that time. There's no time to think, no time to reason. Just falling and immediately standing up and say, "Brother, I love you." So this is an example of this highest ideal in practice and manifestation. Okay. So with that, I'm going to close. Excuse me. Okay. So with that, I'm going to now close, and then we'll take some questions. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. So just to recap, so the ideal is that in practicing any ideal, we have to be, the highest ideals that we practice, we have to know that the highest manifestation is from a standpoint of sattva. So we have to always look at how we're acting towards that ideal, whether it's resist not evil, whether it's seeing God everywhere, whether it's seeing the Atmanan everywhere, whatever it may be. But we always have to practice that again and again, and it's an internal practice. If there are any questions online or elsewhere, we can take those real quickly, and then we'll close it up. Any questions or any discussions? And if not, it's okay. Raised hands. Okay. Oh, you have the Brakesh said microphone diye dao. Microphone. Please speak in microphone.
Hello, Maharaj. Today's class helped me a lot. This is the first class I am attending.
Okay.
So,
speak at the mic.
I was having some questions behind. That is, today in my society only, actually I'm a single woman, I'm a widow, and my son is not here with me now. So I had to deal with them, and they were all dominating me in one thing. So I'm not going into that, but I had some question, like you said, our ideals are very high enough, and we have to step down first, because if I react like that, there may be nuances, and if that point, to step down and look both ways, like dive deep into it as well as balancing it. So this is helping me. Already I know what I am going to do. Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And just one final, so not to lower the ideal, we always keep the ideal high, but where are we with relation to that ideal? That's the only thing. So where are we with, the ideal should stay what it is, we don't lower the ideal, but where am I with that? And I have a long way to go. That ideal, any ideal we talk about, that's like realization, that's like Brahma Jnana. Okay, that's clear to have. Okay, if that's it, any other, I don't see it. Okay. I don't see any other questions from the audience, so, okay. Okay, I just turned 23. Please give me some practical tips to follow the ideal of Karma Yoga. I think practical tips is follow the ideal of Karma Yoga. I think keep trying to look for ways to apply this in your daily life. what Swamiji is saying. He gives us so much. You're going through these classes, and so you can just read Karma Yoga again and again, and what we've been talking about, try to apply them in your daily life. And especially young people today, it's more necessary how to apply these ideals in this age of AI. So this is very, very important. So it's a constant quest. Okay, I think that's it. So I'm going to close then. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat.